The galaxy had already decided humanity's fate. Far beyond Earth's sky, ancient civilizations watched the small blue world with quiet amusement. Humans were loud, divided, and fragile. They fought each other over land and ideas. Their ships barely scratched the edge of interstellar travel. When the Zarkan Dominion finally noticed Earth, it wasn't with fear, it was with laughter. That laughter ended the day humanity answered an insult with silence and preparation. The first Zarkan vessel arrived without warning. It did not attack a city or a fleet. It simply appeared above Earth's moon, a dark, jagged shape blotting out the stars. Its message was short, translated into every human language at once. Developing species detected. Compliance required. Submit, or be erased. Panic swept the planet. Governments argued. Markets collapsed. People prayed, protested, and demanded answers. The Zarkans waited calmly, confident that fear would do their work for them. They did not understand humans. Deep beneath the salt flats of Western Australia, a facility older than the invasion alarms came alive. Power surged through cables that had not carried current in years. Screens flickered on. Hidden doors opened. And people who had been preparing for this moment their entire lives took their places. Dr. Mara Ellison stood at the center of the command floor, staring at the hologram of the Zarkan ship. She didn't look afraid. She looked focused. "So," she said quietly, "they finally came." Admiral Thomas Reyes stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "They think we'll surrender." Mara allowed herself a thin smile. That's their first mistake. For decades, humanity had assumed it was alone. And yet, a few minds had asked a dangerous question: what if we weren't? Those minds had been mocked, underfunded, and buried under layers of secrecy. But they persisted. Not because they feared aliens, but because they feared being unprepared. Project Atlas had been humanity's quiet answer to the unknown. The Zarkans fired a warning shot 2 days later. A beam of violet energy carved a glowing scar across the moon's surface. No lives were lost. The message was clear. Last chance. The United Earth Council convened in emergency session. Some leaders begged for surrender. Others demanded retaliation with weapons that would barely scratch alien shields. Voices rose. Time slipped away. Then Admiral Reyes stood. "We don't negotiate from weakness," he said. "And for the first time in our history, we aren't weak." The room fell silent as the lights dimmed. A new hologram appeared, massive, angular, and unlike any ship humanity had ever admitted to building. Gasps echoed across the chamber. "This is Atlas," Reyes said. "A dreadnought." Orbiting far beyond Pluto, hidden in the dark where sunlight faded into nothing, the Atlas drifted like a sleeping giant. It was not elegant. It was not fast. It was built for one purpose only: to endure. Captain Liane Koroma floated onto the bridge as the ship woke around her. Systems hummed. Gravity stabilized. Lights brightened along steel walls thick enough to survive stars tearing themselves apart. "Status," she said calmly.
"Reactor stable," replied Engineer Pavel Orlov.
"Hull integrity at 100%. Weapons Officer Sanar Idris swallowed. "All batteries charged. Graviton lances online." At the center of the bridge, a new presence came to life. Not human, but born of humanity's collective brilliance. "I am Helios," the ship's artificial intelligence said. "Atlas is ready." Liane exhaled slowly. "Then let's introduce ourselves." The Atlas moved. The Zarkan commander, High Executive Varesh, watched Earth with mild boredom. His species had conquered hundreds of worlds. Humans were nothing special, loud primates with ambition and no sense of scale. "Any response?" he asked. "None," replied his aide. "Planetary communications have gone silent." Varesh chuckled. "Fear. As expected." Then space shifted. Sensors screamed warnings across the Zarkan bridge. A mass signature appeared beyond the moon, impossibly large, emerging from stealth like a mountain tearing free from darkness. "What is that?" Varesh demanded. The Atlas revealed itself. It did not fire. It did not speak. It simply existed, blocking the stars, dwarfing the Zarkan ship by sheer presence alone. Helios transmitted a single message on every known frequency. This is humanity. You are in violation of our space. Withdraw. Silence followed. Then laughter echoed across the Zarkan bridge. A single ship. Varesh sneered. They answer an empire with one toy. Prepare weapons, he ordered casually. The Zarkan ship fired first. Energy slammed into the Atlas, and vanished. The human Dreadnought didn't flinch. Shields rippled once, and stabilized. Confusion replaced arrogance. Fire again, Varesh snapped. The second volley struck harder. Still nothing. Captain Koroma's voice was steady. Permission to respond. On Earth, billions watched the live feed, breath held. Admiral Reyes nodded once. Teach them. The Atlas fired a single graviton lance. Space bent. The Zarkan ship folded inward like paper crushed by an invisible hand. Hull, shields, weapons, all collapsed into a glowing sphere before vanishing entirely. No explosion. No debris. Just absence. Across Earth, people screamed, cried, and laughed all at once. On the Atlas bridge, no one celebrated. Captain Koroma stared at the empty space where the enemy had been. That was a scout, she said quietly. Helios confirmed it. Long-range signals detected. Multiple Zarkan fleets changing course. Admiral Reyes's voice came through the comms, calm but heavy. They're coming in force. Koroma straightened. Good. Humanity had been mocked. Now the galaxy was paying attention. The galaxy responded faster than anyone on Earth expected. Less than 6 hours after the Zarkan scout vanished, long-range sensors across the solar system began screaming warnings. Space itself rippled again and again as ships tore their way out of faster-than-light travel. Not one. Not 10. Hundreds. The Zarkan Dominion had come in force. From Earth's surface, the night sky changed. New stars appeared where none had been before, bright and hostile. People stared upward in silent terror. Children cried. Adults held each other. For the first time, humanity truly understood how small it was. On the bridge of the Atlas, Captain Lian Koroma watched the tactical display bloom red with enemy signatures. The Dreadnought's massive screens struggled to keep up as more ships arrived every second. Count, she asked. Weapons Officer Sanar Idris swallowed hard. We're past 200. And they're still coming. Engineer Orloff muttered under his breath. That scout must have been important. Helios spoke with calm precision. Analysis complete. This is a punitive fleet. Their goal is total eradication, not negotiation. Silence filled the bridge for a heartbeat. Then Koroma nodded. Then we don't give them the satisfaction. The Zarkan Armada formed into perfect attack formations, each vessel bristling with weapons older than human civilization itself. At their center loomed a colossal command ship, its hull carved with glowing symbols of conquest. High Executive Varesh stood on its bridge, his confidence restored. There, he hissed, pointing at the Atlas. One ship cannot stop an empire. Orders, asked his aide. Varesh's eyes gleamed. Crush it. Slowly. The first wave fired. The void between planets turned into a storm of energy. Beams, pulses, and warheads slammed into the Atlas from every direction. The Dreadnought shields flared like a miniature sun, layers of light folding over each other as power readings spiked. On Earth, people watched in horror as the human ship disappeared behind blinding flashes. Shields holding, Helios reported. At 78% and stabilizing. Orloff laughed weakly. I helped design those shields, and even I didn't think they'd take that. Koroma didn't smile. She leaned forward, hands clasped behind her back. Return fire. Controlled pattern. The Atlas answered. Graviton lances fired in sequence, not wildly, not in panic, but with surgical precision. Each shot bent space just enough to tear through shields and fold enemy ships into themselves. Zarkan vessels vanished by the dozen, crushed without explosions, erased as if they had never existed. The Zarkan fleet hesitated. Varesh slammed a clawed fist into the console.
Impossible.
Increase output. Flank it. Enemy ships surged forward, surrounding the Atlas, firing at point-blank range. Some managed to breach the outer shield layers. The hull shuddered. Alarms rang through the Dreadnought. Damage reports, Koroma ordered. Minor breaches on armor rings 3 and 4, Orlov replied. Nothing critical. Yet. Helios adjusted firing solutions in real time, learning, adapting, predicting enemy movements faster than any organic mind could. But even it had limits. Captain, Helios said, at current engagement levels, shield failure is projected in 23 minutes. Koroma closed her eyes for half a second. We don't need forever. We need a message. She tapped her console. Open a channel. All frequencies. Across the battlefield, every Zarkan screen flickered. Varesh sneered as the human appeared, small, fragile, standing on a metal bridge far humbler than his own. This is Captain Lian Koroma of Earth, she said evenly. You came to erase us. You failed. Varesh laughed loudly. You hide behind one ship. We will break it and burn your world. Koroma's gaze hardened. This is not our only ship. That was a lie. But it was a useful one. At her signal, Helios released Project Echo. Across the battlefield, space bloomed with ghost signatures. Dozens, then hundreds, of false Dreadnought readings appeared, each mimicking Atlas's energy profile. The void seemed suddenly crowded with human monsters. Zarkan targeting systems went wild. False readings. Varesh roared. Ignore them. But doubt had already crept in.
Formation discipline faltered.
Ships hesitated. And hesitation, against humans, was deadly. The Atlas surged forward. Koroma gave the order humanity had waited centuries to hear. All weapons. Full power. Every system the Dreadnought had unleashed at once. Graviton lances. Kinetic accelerators. Experimental energy weapons built from stolen theories and desperate hope. The Atlas did not fight like an empire. It fought like a cornered species with nothing to lose. Zarkan ships died screaming across subspace channels. Entire formations collapsed as human weapons exploited weaknesses no one believed a primitive species could find. On Earth, the impossible happened. People cheered. Varesh stared at the battlefield, disbelief twisting his features. They should be broken, he whispered. They should be begging. Instead, the Atlas advanced, scarred but unyielding, a symbol burning itself into the memory of every watching civilization. Then Helios spoke again. Captain, new development. Multiple enemy vessels are withdrawing. Koroma straightened. Running. Repositioning, Helios corrected. They are forming a firing line around Earth. The truth hit hard. They're not trying to beat us, Sonar said quietly. They're trying to punish the planet. Koroma's jaw tightened. Can we stop them? Helios paused, just a fraction longer than usual. Not all of them. Koroma activated the channel again, her voice now carrying across the stars. Varesh. Call them back. The Zarkan commander snarled. Why would I spare your world? Koroma didn't raise her voice. Because if Earth burns, the Atlas will hunt you. Not today. Not tomorrow. Forever. Varesh hesitated. For the first time in his long career, fear touched him. Because he realized something the Empire had never considered. Humans did not think in terms of conquest. They thought in terms of vengeance. And they were very good at waiting. The Zarkan fleet slowly pulled back. The sky above Earth cleared. The battle was over. But the war had only just begun. On the Atlas bridge, Koroma finally allowed herself to sit. The crew looked exhausted, wounded, alive. Helios spoke softly. Captain, the galaxy is watching. Koroma looked at the stars. Good, she said. Let them learn. Silence followed the battle, heavy and unreal. Where moments ago space had burned with weapons fire, now only drifting wreckage and distant stars remained. The Zarkan fleet had withdrawn beyond sensor range, taking its wounded pride with it. Earth was still standing. Humanity was still alive. But no one believed it was over. On the bridge of the Atlas, damage crews moved quickly, sealing hull fractures and rerouting power. The air smelled of metal and ozone. Some crew members sat against the walls, breathing hard, hands shaking now that adrenaline had faded. Captain Lian Koroma stood quietly, watching Earth rotate slowly on the main screen. Blue, green, white. Fragile. Beautiful. We held, Engineer Orloff said, disbelief in his voice. Against that. Koroma nodded. For today. Helios continued to process data streams pouring in from every direction. Long-range communications detected. Multiple non-Zarkan civilizations are attempting contact. Koroma raised an eyebrow. Already? Yes, Helios replied. The battle was observed by at least 17 stellar powers. Across the galaxy, reactions spread like wildfire. On worlds humanity had never heard of, ancient councils argued late into their nights. On massive ring cities and drifting habitats, analysts replayed the footage again and again. A species barely out of its home system had stood against one of the Dominion's punitive fleets, and survived. That changed everything. On Earth, celebrations erupted in the streets. People hugged strangers. Flags waved. For a brief moment, fear loosened its grip. But beneath the joy was tension, the unspoken understanding that this victory had come at a price. The United Earth Council reconvened within hours. They didn't destroy us, said Councillor Amina Rao. But they will come back. Yes, Admiral Reyes agreed. And next time, they won't underestimate us. Dr. Mara Ellison leaned forward. Which is why hiding is no longer an option. The galaxy knows we exist. The question is how we choose to exist. That question echoed far beyond Earth. 3 days later, the first alien envoy arrived. The ship was small, elegant, and unarmed. It emerged slowly at the edge of Earth space, broadcasting peaceful signals in dozens of mathematical patterns. This is the Aurelian Compact, the message translated. We request dialogue. The Atlas escorted the envoy to lunar orbit. Captain Koroma watched as the alien delegation appeared on screen. Tall, slender beings with shimmering skin and eyes that reflected light like water. They bowed slightly, not in submission, but respect. You stood, their speaker said, where others fell. Koroma answered honestly. We didn't have a choice. The Aurelian tilted its head. That is why you survived. They explained what the Zarkan Dominion truly was, not just conquerors, but enforcers of a brutal galactic order. Any species that advanced too quickly was crushed, enslaved, or erased to maintain stability. You were meant to be an example, the envoy said softly. And instead, Koroma asked. You became a question. More envoys followed. Some came openly. Others whispered through encrypted channels. Species that had hidden for centuries now dared to speak. Traders, scientists, refugees from Zarkan rule, all drawn by the same realization. The Empire could bleed. Helios compiled projections rapidly. Captain, alliances are forming organically. Probability of multi-species resistance within one standard year has risen to 64%. Koroma exhaled slowly. They're not helping out of kindness. No, Helios agreed. They are helping out of hope. Hope was dangerous. The Zarkan Dominion did not tolerate it. High Executive Varesh stood before the inner council, his earlier arrogance replaced with rigid control. Massive figures surrounded him, their presence crushing. You failed, one intoned. Varesh bowed. The humans wield forbidden technology. Their Dreadnought is a single ship, another interrupted. You allowed fear to spread. Varesh straightened. Then give me permission to end it properly. The council considered. Total annihilation, the voice finally said.
No survivors. No symbols.
Orders rippled outward. Fleets larger than any before began to mobilize. Back aboard the Atlas, Helios detected the build-up weeks before the first ships moved. "Captain," it said, "this time they will not withdraw." Koroma gathered her senior crew. Faces were tired, scarred, resolute. "We knew this moment would come," she said. "The Atlas can't stop an empire alone." Sonar frowned. "Then what do we do?" Koroma looked to Helios. "We change the rules." Human ingenuity had never been about raw strength. It had always been about adaptation. Within days, the Atlas became more than a weapon. It became a signal hub, a mobile forge, a meeting ground. Engineers shared designs. Scientists exchanged ideas across species. Human improvisation mixed with alien elegance, creating systems no empire doctrine could predict. Project Echo was expanded. Not illusions this time, but coordination. Small fleets formed around the Atlas. Not unified under one banner, but connected by shared purpose. Each species brought what it could. Fighters, sensors, medical ships, data. Humanity didn't lead by command. They led by example. On Earth, people worked around the clock. Factories retooled. Universities emptied as students volunteered. Artists painted the Atlas on walls and screens, a reminder that survival was possible. Fear still existed. But so did determination. The Zarkan Armada finally crossed the system's edge weeks later. This time, they did not speak. The stars themselves seemed to retreat as thousands of ships advanced, blotting out the sky. Captain Koroma stood on the bridge, hands steady. "Helios," she said, "final assessment." "Enemy strength exceeds ours by a factor of 9, Helios replied. "Victory probability, low." Koroma smiled faintly. "Funny. Humans have never been good with probabilities." She opened a channel, not to the enemy, but to the galaxy. "This is Earth," she said. "We are not an empire. We do not conquer. We endure." The Atlas moved forward, allies at its sides. The Zarkans had come to end a species. Instead, they were about to face something far worse. A united refusal to disappear. The stars trembled as the Zarkan Armada advanced. From Earth's surface, the sky looked wrong. Too crowded. Too dark. Thousands of enemy ships formed a moving wall, stretching across space like a closing fist. Even those who had celebrated weeks earlier now felt fear return, sharp and cold. This was no warning. This was execution. On the bridge of the Atlas, the tension was heavy enough to taste. Every console glowed with red alerts. Every crew member knew the truth, even if no one said it aloud. This battle could not be won by force alone. Captain Liane Koroma stood at the center of the bridge, her posture calm, her eyes fixed on the incoming enemy. Around her, ships from dozens of species formed loose formations. None matched the power of the Atlas, but together they represented something the Zarkans had never faced. Choice. "Enemy fleet entering weapons range," Helios announced. "They are deploying planet-killer platforms." A low murmur passed through the bridge. "They're aiming straight for Earth," Sonar said quietly. Koroma nodded. "As expected." Engineer Orloff clenched his fists. "If those platforms fire—" "They won't," Koroma said. She activated a channel that reached far beyond the battlefield. "Begin phase horizon." Across Allied ships, systems shifted. Energy signatures changed. Signals spread through subspace like ripples in water. The Zarkans noticed immediately. High Executor Varesh stared at the readings in confusion. "What are they doing?" "They are dispersing," his aide replied. "No unified attack pattern." Varesh sneered. "Disorder. Fear. Fire." The first planet-killer weapon charged. Before it could release its beam, space twisted. Not violently. Not explosively. Precisely. A section of space simply folded, and the weapon platform vanished, not destroyed, not damaged, but displaced. Gone. Zarkan commanders shouted in alarm. What happened? Varesh roared. They manipulated local spacetime, an officer replied in disbelief. Crude, but effective. Varesh's eyes widened. That technology is unstable. It should tear them apart. It would, the officer said. If they were alone. The Atlas surged forward, acting as an anchor. Helios adjusted thousands of variables in real time, stabilizing distortions across Allied ships. Human engineers had designed the system with one core assumption. Things would go wrong. So they planned for failure. Again and again, Zarkan weapons vanished, misfired, or folded into harmless voids. Their perfect formations began to break as confusion spread. They are using chaos as a weapon, Varesh realized. On Earth, people watched as the impossible unfolded. The enemy fleet no longer advanced smoothly. It stuttered, hesitated, repositioned. For the first time, the Empire looked uncertain. But the Zarkans were not fools. Adapt, Varesh commanded. Overwhelm the anchor. Hundreds of ships turned toward the Atlas at once. The sky burned. Every weapon the Zarkans had poured into the human Dreadnought. Shields flared, cracked, and reformed. Hull plating melted and rehardened. The Atlas shook violently. Structural integrity at 60%, Helios reported. Failure imminent if current fire continues. Orlov shouted over alarms. We can't take this much longer. Koroma's hands tightened. Helios, she said, release the data. Across the galaxy, a signal burst outward. Human data. Weapon designs. Shield frequencies. Countermeasures. Weaknesses. Everything humanity had learned about the Zarkans, shared freely, without control. Captain, Helios said, you are giving away strategic advantage. Koroma nodded. We're giving away trust. Allied ships responded instantly. New firing patterns emerged. Coordinated strikes hit Zarkan ships at newly revealed weak points. The Empire's advantage began to collapse under its own rigidity. They had ruled through secrecy. Humans ruled through sharing. Varesh watched his fleet suffer losses at an accelerating rate. This was no longer domination. This was resistance spreading faster than he could contain. They were never meant to unite, he whispered. On the Atlas, power readings spiked dangerously. Captain, Helios warned, core overload risk increasing. Koroma looked at Earth on the screen one last time. Then we end this, she said softly. She opened a channel to every ship, human and alien alike. We are not stronger than them, she said. We are not older. We are not wiser. Her voice carried across space. But we are stubborn. And we do not stop. The Atlas charged its final system. A weapon no empire would ever build. Not because they couldn't. But because they wouldn't dare. The Atlas released a wave not of destruction, but disruption. A cascading signal that targeted command hierarchies, severing fleet-wide coordination. Zarkan ships, built to obey centralized control, suddenly found themselves alone. Orders vanished. Formation shattered. Panic followed. All enemy fleets experiencing command collapse, Helios reported. They are retreating. In disarray. Cheers erupted across Allied channels. But Koroma did not celebrate. Helios, she asked quietly, status. A pause. Longer this time. Atlas core stability at critical levels, Helios said. Probability of survival if we pursue, low. Koroma closed her eyes. Then we don't pursue. She gave the final order. All Allied ships, withdraw. Protect Earth. The Atlas turned, battered but unbroken, placing itself between the retreating enemy and the planet it had sworn to defend. The Zarkan armada fled. Not because it was destroyed, but because it had failed. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity did not conquer. Humanity endured. And endurance, the empires would soon learn, was contagious. The war did not end with explosions. It ended with silence. Across the solar system, wreckage drifted slowly, illuminated by distant starlight. Zarkan ships fled in broken formations, no longer proud, no longer orderly. They jumped away without ceremony, without threats, without words. They ran. On Earth, the sky cleared for the second time in months. People stood outside in streets, fields, and rooftops, staring upward as if afraid the stars might change their minds. Some cried. Some laughed. Many simply stood in stunned silence. Humanity was still here. Aboard the Atlas, the cost of that survival became painfully clear. Smoke filled sections of the ship. Lights flickered. Power surged and dropped in unstable waves. Crew members moved through corridors helping the wounded, sealing ruptures, doing what humans had always done best, fixing what was broken with whatever they had left. Captain Liane Koroma remained on the bridge, exhaustion heavy in her bones. Her uniform was torn, her hands trembling now that the danger had passed. "Report," she said quietly. Engineer Orloff's voice was rough. "We've stabilized the core, barely. The Atlas will fly again. But not soon." Sanar leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. "We scared an empire with one ship." Koroma shook her head. "No. We scared them with an idea." Helios remained active, though its voice carried subtle strain. Long-range scans confirm total Zarkan withdrawal from this region of space. No immediate hostile activity detected. A soft exhale passed through the bridge. For the first time since first contact, humanity had breathing room. The galaxy reacted quickly. Messages flooded in from systems far beyond human reach. Some were cautious. Some openly grateful. Some fearful. Entire civilizations that had hidden for centuries now dared to speak, emboldened by what they had witnessed. The question echoed everywhere. If humans could stand up to the Zarkans, what else was possible? On the Zarkan capital world, High Executor Varesh stood alone in a vast chamber, staring at a projection of Earth. His wounds were bound. His pride was not. "They should not exist," he whispered.
En aide approche carefully.
"The Council has ruled. Expansion efforts are suspended. Resources will be redirected." Varesh turned slowly. "Redirected to what?" "Containment," the aide replied. "The humans are unpredictable." Varesh laughed bitterly. "That is an understatement." Back on Earth, the United Earth Council addressed the planet. Admiral Reyes stood before billions, no longer hiding the truth. "We are not safe," he said honestly. "But we are not helpless. The galaxy is larger, stranger, and more dangerous than we ever imagined. And now it knows us." He paused. "What happens next depends on who we choose to be." Humanity chose to rebuild. The Atlas was towed into high orbit, a wounded guardian watching over its home. Engineers and scientists from a dozen species arrived to help repair it. Knowledge flowed freely. Boundaries softened. Dr. Mara Ellison stood beside Captain Koroma on a quiet observation deck days later. "You realize," Mara said, "history will never stop talking about this." Koroma watched Earth slowly turn below them. "I don't care about history." Mara smiled faintly. "You should. You just rewrote it." Koroma shook her head.
No.
"We reminded it." Helios spoke gently through the deck speakers. "Captain, incoming priority transmission." Koroma turned. "From where?" "From multiple sources," Helios replied. "Independent systems. Former Zarkan subjects. They are requesting guidance." Koroma felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. Not command. Expectation. She opened the channel. "This is Earth," she said. "We don't rule. We don't demand. We defend ourselves, and those who choose to stand with us." The response was immediate. They chose to stand. The Atlas would not remain alone for long. Months later, human ships began appearing beyond the solar system. Not war fleets. Not invasion forces. Exploration vessels. Aid convoys. Listening posts. Humanity did not rush to conquer the stars. They approached carefully, curiously, stubbornly. On distant worlds, children grew up hearing a new kind of story, not of gods or emperors, but of a species that should have broken, and didn't. A species that shared its strength instead of hoarding it. A species that turned fear into preparation. A species that refused to disappear quietly. On the Atlas Bridge, now repaired and brighter than before, Captain Koroma prepared for departure once more. Destination? Sanar asked. Koroma looked at the stars ahead. Anywhere we're needed. Helios adjusted course smoothly. Captain, the probability of future conflict remains high. Koroma smiled. So does the probability of survival. The Atlas moved forward, not as a symbol of dominance, but of defiance. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, an empire watched and remembered the day they laughed at humanity. They would never make that mistake again. And humanity? Humanity was just getting started.